So I'm back and still responding to these guys who are still trying to get to the bottom of why I and people like me are still talking about how much God doesn't exist. Talking about why we advocate for atheism, why atheists preach according to them. And of course, if you want to understand why atheists advocate for atheism, the best people to go to are Muslims. So let's see.
Why? Why do you think these people need to constantly bash religious people, bash belief in God, and reconfirm it amongst each other like a mantra? There is no God, there is no God, there is no God. And just keep reminding each other why God doesn't exist. Why do you think that is?
Okay, so before we get an answer from the ex-atheist who never advocated for atheists, let's see what an actual advocate for atheism says. Me. Hello. The reason why I advocate for atheism and sort of explain my reasoning as to why I don't believe that there is a God is because, well, for one, there are people out there who are questioning their faith, and I want to help those people. I know firsthand what it's like to be questioning your faith and to be searching for answers that you're just not finding. And I know how confusing arguments for religion can be, and how that'll suck you back in simply because of the confusion. My goal has always been to clear that up and to sort of explain to people who are questioning their faith why it's more reasonable not to believe that there is a God, or to some extent to believe that there is no God. But there is another reason why people would not only advocate for atheists, but be within an atheist community, sort of. And that's for the feeling of community, to have people that understand you, understand how you think, to some extent why you think it, and understand how it feels to be surrounded by people who disagree with you on things that, to you, to the atheist, seems silly. And since virtually everyone around you disagrees with you, potentially, I know that's my case because I live in the Bible Belt, it's nice to come to a group of people who will understand, who you can talk to, who you can explain things with, who can explain things to you. I mean, everybody wants to be around people who agree with them, right? I mean, why do you go to mosques or talk to Muslim people, even though, oh, you both believe Islam, so you're just talking about Islam all day? You'd think if you believed it, you wouldn't have to talk about it all day. It's a ridiculous thing to say. If you're an atheist, you see how religion affects the world around you, and you don't want it to be that way. So, of course, you're going to want to advocate for your own opinion, just as everyone does on pretty much every opinion they have. But why does ex-atheist think that people advocate for atheism?
Well, if you throw enough dung at the wall, eventually it will be covered.
Right.
But the wall still remains, doesn't it?
Right.
So, like you say, it's a reaffirmation process.
Right.
Something within them is most likely niggling them, or maybe stronger than niggling, driving them towards that there is meaning to life, there is a purpose, there is a higher power, but the nafs, the lower self, as we say, is getting fed by these affirmations and these so-called what would you call these top atheists?
Well, humanistic type
These
of
preachers.
preachers, yeah.
I would say that this is a pet peeve of mine, but for one, the word pet peeve is in itself a pet peeve of mine, but also this is a bit stronger than a pet peeve. This properly pisses me off when people assume that they know what you or I think without your or my input. That they assume what you think, what you feel, without you telling them anything about how you think or how you feel. And to add on to that, they assume why you think that and why you feel that. That pisses me off. No, this is not why I talk about atheism. For the most part, atheists aren't an atheist for emotional reasons. For the most part, it's either a logical reason or they were never converted to any religion in the first place. And it's kind of ridiculous when religious people assume that, oh, it has to be an emotional thing. Oh, they were hurt and they're angry at God. Or, oh, they feel like they want to be closer to God, but they push him away because emotional reasons. They don't want to be under him. Whatever. Maybe that's how the ex-atheist here felt. I don't know his name. But maybe that's how he felt. But that doesn't mean that's how every atheist feels. I mean, he never really felt the need to advocate for atheism, as he himself says, so how does he know what would drive people to advocate for it? This is just an assumption. It's speculation. And it's really aggravating when they assume and speculate without taking into account what activists themselves say. But the question in itself is flawed. As you remember in the last video, they talked about how they went to a convention and all of the atheists there were just talking about how God doesn't exist, when in reality, that's not what they were talking about. They were talking about majority social issues. And that's why people advocate for atheism, largely because of social issues.
So the idea of rights, you know, we believe in humanism. We believe in the rights of women and we support feminism. We believe in the rights of animals. We believe in the freedom from religion and we believe in this right. Doesn't even the concept of rights make sense from an atheistic point of view?
No, not at all. No. Where have you drawn them from?
They'll say, we've used our reasoning, we've come to these rights.
Yeah, but that's just how you feel. That's just how you feel.
But my feeling is important to me.
Yeah, but that's just your own selfish viewpoint on what's going on. The link between your brain and your body, how the chemicals are getting shunted around, they make you feel a certain way. So why should I care?
They could be arranged in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. I could come back and say I don't care about any of these rights.
Or you can make arbitrary rights.
Yeah, I can make arbitrary rights today and dispose of them tomorrow. Like they do, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, that's pretty much exactly what's going on. We decide what rights we have. We declare rights based on feelings, not just our own, but on the feelings of other people. We decide what rights we have based on how it makes us feel. And yeah, rights to a certain degree are a bit arbitrary, and they do change as the culture changes. For example, once in the United States, people had the right to own other people. And obviously we don't now, and now we think that that's egregious, but there was a time when that was acceptable, and that was protected. And there was a time when we had no right to buy alcohol in the United States. The prohibition. That right was taken away and then given back. And we currently don't have the right to buy marijuana in the United States, but we're fighting for that right. There's always been arguments as to what rights we should or shouldn't have. It's changed as the culture changes. It's funny how your argument is, oh, if rights aren't given by God, then they would be arbitrary and subject to change. And then you immediately say, yeah, like they do. You base your idea of what rights you have on your idea of God, and other religions base their idea of what rights we should or shouldn't have on their idea of God. That doesn't mean that there is a God. That's just the way you get your rights. That doesn't mean everyone gets their rights in the same way. So this is a bit of an argument from consequence. If God doesn't exist, then rights would be arbitrary. Okay, sure, that doesn't mean that God exists. Maybe you don't like that consequence, but that doesn't mean that you're right or that I'm wrong.
So when you have, for example, an atheist coming up with moral arguments against religion, what would be your sort of response to that? Would you just say it's pointless?
I'd say give me a base. What are you standing upon? You know, bring your evidence if you are truthful.
Okay.
Like the Quran says, give me a base to see what you stand upon and I'll give you mine.
Okay.
And we'll compare and contrast. But again, if you're going to be honest about your atheism, you stand upon zilch. Nothing, you know?
But, I mean, you gave us a basis yourself. Feeling. To some degree, I agree with that. My basis for morality is harm. Suffering. If you're suffering more than you need to, against your will, that's immoral, whatever's happening. And the moral argument against God says that people are suffering more than they need to, that God could very well step in, fix that, and the world would be better, but he doesn't do that. So he is malevolent. Either that, or he's not all-powerful, or not all-knowing. Whatever it is. And you argue that because it's God doing it, then it's okay, because God decides what's moral. So God decides that one person suffering is just good, and that even if there's a better way to do it, then it's good to make this person suffer. I don't agree with that. I think that wanting people to suffer is a bad thing, whether you're a human or whether you're a god. I don't think that because God loves us and he's doing it because he loves us takes away from the fact that there are better ways to do it, and God loves seeing us in pain for no apparent reason. We can still very well have morality without God, albeit we would definitely disagree about what is moral. And we do. We do disagree about what is moral, as would be the case if there is no God giving us our morality. But you get your idea of morality from a god, so in your mind, everyone has to get it in the same way, but that's not the case. Sure, I could agree to a more objective standard, but I don't have to. Not everyone does. And because I agree to an objective standard, that doesn't make me more correct than somebody who doesn't.
This is interesting because kufr, disbelief, always contradicts itself. So I'm an atheist humanist, and at the same time you believe in Darwinism and evolution, when that's all about survival and cutthroat competition and gene selection, and it's all just, very much focused on the selfish gene. But at the same time it's kind of like, but I believe in, he's got this fluffy atheist type humanism. I believe in rights, and I believe in this, and I believe in kindness. But there's a clear contradiction there. You can't say, yeah, I'm an atheist and I'm in this and I'm also this.
Well, no, I don't see a contradiction there. Evolution by natural selection isn't a selfish thing, necessarily. It can very well be beneficial for a species to be a very social species, as we are. If a species can learn to group together and work in groups and survive as a group instead of as an individual, then that can very well help that species. Some animals are better at surviving in groups, some animals are better at surviving as individuals. That's natural selection. We can very well be naturally selected to care about other people, to work with other people, and care about the group or the society. We are social animals. We do have natural instincts to care, to empathize, to work for the interests of the group that we're in. And that does help our species as a whole. It doesn't have to be selfish. It doesn't have to be cutthroat. It isn't always, so savage. It isn't always the stronger animal kills the weaker animal so the stronger animal survives. Sometimes it's sharing resources helps you better than those that don't work together. I mean, hell, there are lots of animals that help other animals, and that symbiotic relationship helps both of them survive. It's not always cutthroat.
What are you working towards? Again, it comes back to, they say, we want a better society. We want a better world. But again, how can it be a better world if it's just random? You either find a way to get rid of the randomness, or discover that it's not actually random, or you just acknowledge that it's random and leave it there.
Okay, I'm not really sure what you mean by random. Do you mean that everything happens by random chance? Just because things are random doesn't mean that it's unstructured, and that doesn't mean that we can't make things better. Doesn't mean that we don't want to make things better. I personally don't believe in free will. I do believe in determinism. But that doesn't change the fact that we want to help society. We can do that. So in many cases, we would decide to help society as best we can. Maybe we're not freely making that decision. Maybe that decision is a reaction. That doesn't mean that there's no randomness. That doesn't mean that there is a God. I don't really want to get into the specifics right now, but I don't see this as an argument against atheism. We can care about our society and want to embetter our society without a God giving us that want.
Okay.
Don't say you're making the world better with these things. Now that's not saying that these things are bad. They're good acts in and of themselves, but the principles behind it, you don't have principles behind them. So you can't counter the likes of Stalin or Pol Pot. Their methodology is just as valid as yours from an atheistic viewpoint.
Okay.
No, that's not the philosophy that people have, that atheists have. We can want to embetter the society and embetter the world, and to the atheist, those sorts of ideas, those sorts of tragedies can very well be seen as more harmful than it should be. That can very well be disagreeable to the atheist, regardless of whether or not there's a God. I take it that the argument is, oh, Nazi Germany was one way, the current United States is this way, one's just as valid as the other because there's no God to give you a basis to compare them. But that's ridiculous. Like I said before, we are social animals and we evolved to be that way. And as social animals, we don't want genocides, we don't want tragedies because we have sympathy and empathy over the victims. Now, obviously, to some degree, that is a bit arbitrary because there were people who did commit these atrocities. But the fact that we don't believe in a God doesn't mean that we can't have a philosophy that disagrees with other philosophies. We can have a basis for our morality and our philosophy. Maybe that's not God, but it's still very well a basis. Maybe that basis can be arbitrary. Maybe people disagree with other people. That doesn't mean that your God exists. That just means that people disagree with each other.
Deep down, they just want certainty. They just want to feel better by knowing there's more people in their in-group.
Yeah.
And it's all about safety in numbers. If I'm going to go to hell, might as well take a few people with me.
Well, I mean, this certainly is a factor. I mean, everybody wants a community, much in the same way that you talk about Islam. You want more people to be Muslim so that you feel like you have a better community, that you are helping other people by bringing them to what you believe, to help them agree with you. Everybody wants to make their in-group bigger, to have more people to agree with them. That's human nature. It's not like that's the only reason. It's not like that's the only driving factor. You can't completely pinpoint it to one thing because it's a myriad of reasons.
Excellent. So we've covered, if you like, every angle from which the atheists maybe try and defend the very why they actually preach. It doesn't make any sense because life is pointless.
Except we don't believe that life is pointless because we believe that we can enjoy life, and if more people enjoy life, then that's better. Maybe arbitrarily, but we can still not see life as pointless even if we don't believe in a God.
It doesn't make any sense because you're not going to make anything better.
Except if society is better, then we have made something better, namely society, which we do care about since we're social animals.
And it definitely doesn't make any sense from a Darwinian point of view we were talking about this the other day, if there is no God, if, fine, we evolved blind natural selection and we're just here, then just spend your time doing the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Just go out and do all the haram you can, all the vices you can. What's the point of sitting on the internet, typing, I don't like religious people, I don't believe in religion, I don't believe in God, I don't do this. Just go out and enjoy yourself,
But what if we enjoy talking about religion? What if we enjoy responding to religious people? What if we enjoy the community of people who understand us? And some people enjoy pissing other people off. I don't. That's why my videos tend to be more or less tame. But that's how some people are. And maybe we want other people to enjoy their lives too. And maybe we feel like setting them free from religion is a good way to do that, because maybe we feel like people are wasting their lives away by restricting themselves from what they can or can't do, that they are harming themselves by repressing certain things. Sure, we want to enjoy our lives, and I definitely enjoy my life. I do things that I enjoy. I have tons of video games down here, and I like to play them. I have fun with that. But it's also important that we make the society around us better as well, or at least to some of us that's important. And that's why we try to make them agree with us, because we all think that we have it right. We all think that we're correct. So if we can explain things to those who are looking for answers, then overall, that's better. So that we can help people come to a conclusion that will embetter their life. That's why anybody talks about anything. That's why I talk about atheism. That's why you talk about Islam. That's why Christians talk about Christianity. Because we all think that we're going to make society better. Which one of us is right? Me, obviously. We all have our reasons, and I know you feel like yours is more objective than mine, but that in itself doesn't make you correct. It doesn't.